Today I would like to talk about some of the things I learned working for the U.S. Forest Service as a wildlife biologist and technician, and how it relates to the Dharma. The Forest Service was founded by Gifford Pinchot in 1905. At the time, there was a growing recognition that the vast forests of the West needed some sort of management and protection. And there were a few areas that were designated as forest reserves. 5 years later, after Gifford Pinchot had been assigned as chief, there were 150 national forests covering 172 million acres throughout the US. And there's even more today. Gifford Pinchot was friends with President Theodore Roosevelt, and both of them shared the view of the importance of conservation. Gifford Pinchot is now regarded as the father of conservation, and the ideas he spread about the importance of protecting and preserving natural land. His approach in conservation was to work for the greatest good, for the greatest number of people, for the longest time. This approach is very similar to the Buddhist view of doing all actions, not just for ourselves in this life, but for all beings in the greatest way possible, forever. The truth is, it's not about me and what I can do to be happy right now, even if it is counter to how I normally think and act. This view is what is most sustainable for helping all of life to thrive in the best way possible, which is ultimately what I really want when I really think about it. As a wildlife biologist, a large part of my job was doing habitat analysis. This meant looking at different habitats for different species through the lens of what each species needed to survive, such as food, shelter, and protection from predators. For example, when I lived on the Oregon coast, the old-growth forests there supported the endangered species of the marbled murrelet, which is a seabird that would fly inland up to 50 miles a day, feeding its single chick back and forth. And so it depended on these old-growth forests to have the protection for its chick to keep it from predators, since it was traveling back and forth to the ocean so frequently. And also the northern spotted owl depends on these old-growth forests, and the different species that it depends on is the flying squirrel and red tree-vole, which depend on complex habitats. In North Idaho, I was looking at the habitat requirements of lynx, which require complex bushy habitat, and the grizzly bear, which really just wants a bunch of huckleberries and to be as far away from people as possible. In looking at the forests through the eyes of these different species required looking through the lens of different perspectives on different time scales and their different needs. I had to ask myself questions of how long would it take the forest to recover if we removed some of these trees? How would that affect the local resources and bring in potential predators? In light of climate change, increased risk of fires and invasive species, would thinning these forests actually help the species, or would it hurt them? I couldn't just focus on one species, but had to think of all the different interactions of the different species on different levels and how they influenced and interconnected with each other. For instance, thinning some trees might help them to grow bigger in the long term into old growth habitat over the course of 50, 100, 200 years. But in the short term, it could have the potential of bringing in predators like jays and ravens, which would eat the marbled murrelet in the short term. So it was a constant balance of thinking of long term, helping the species, and trying to protect for them in the long term as well. So while I loved looking at things from different angles and perspectives, it's often a challenge to make clear decisions, because land management, while based on science, is not a black and white thing at all. And it has many different decisions to have to make, and it's much more of an art. So I often had to go with my best guess, considering all the different options and factors that were involved, and put it forward and do our best. And this is what life is about: doing the best that we can with the information that we have, considering all the different factors and perspectives, and going forward with the best that we can at the time. We have to think about the different time scale of what's happening right now versus the long-term time scale of beginningless lives and beginningless time. And then the big picture of things of how important is this thought and action right in this moment? And then how does it help or hurt things in the long run? I need to look at what are my needs physically and emotionally, and how do those complement or conflict with others' needs? How do my thoughts and actions influence others? Gifford Pinchot also had several more quotes that I would like to share that have some of his wisdom. He said, "The vast possibilities of our great future will become realities only if we make ourselves responsible for those realities." Like Venerable said in her teachings last week, we have to imagine our greatest potential to be able to make it a reality. And then we have to step up and actually do the work to recognize that we do have the responsibility and the ability to respond. Another quote he said is, "Learning is the gradual replacement of fantasy with fact." Dharma practice is all about this, about seeing reality first of what I believe, and then examining to see, is it true or not? And as I'm examining myself, I'm finding a lot of my deep beliefs that I am not even aware of. When I look at them, they're completely not true, and they're actually quite harmful to myself and to others. Another quote Gifford Pinchot said is, "Innovation never happens as planned." It's wonderful to have new ideas and thoughts on how to improve things, but it's never going to turn out as we imagined because there's too many factors, too many different perspectives, and too many different things for us to know exactly how things will unfold. So instead of getting upset with this reality, I can expect more things to go not as planned and to be able to meet things with more humor and ease, which will be much more enjoyable. So these are all thoughts and perspectives that I try to keep in view as I work on the sustainable restoration of myself in the hopes of making a difference on this planet and for all living beings, human, flying, or fuzzy, for the greatest good, for the greatest number, for the long run.